Hello and welcome back to Quarterlight. Today we're going to look at everyone's favourite, the Volkswagen Golf. This time it's the original, the Mark 1. First launched in May 1974, and of course, what we're up to now, Generation 8 of the Volkswagen Golf, it's still going. Talk of a Generation 9 in 2026, 2027, still going to be a petrol engine vehicle. But anyway, let's concentrate on this Mark 1. The Mark 1, like I say, was launched in May 1974 and was a huge shift for Volkswagen. It was there to replace the now antiquated Volkswagen Beetle, a huge change of platform. So we've gone from a rear-engine, air-cooled, rear-wheel drive vehicle to now with the Golf, a front-engined, front-wheel drive, water-cooled engine. So it was a completely different vehicle. And of course it arrived at a great time. Hatchbacks were becoming extremely popular in the UK, and of course that was going to grow and grow and grow right into the 80s. Excuse me. So then what happened next? Well, there was also a GTI, so the start of the hot hatches, if you will. That arrived in, I think, June 1976 as a 1.6 injection. There was also later on in that year, September 76, I think, a diesel model arrived. The brochure we're going to look at today is from 1977, but doesn't show that GTI or the diesel. It shows the standard trims. And the standard trims in the UK at that time was a base model, the L, and then we jumped to a GLS. Strange trim levels in the 70s for Volkswagen. I was looking at a Scirocco brochure earlier on from the 70s, and they kind of dropped some models and only ended up with a GLS. It was very weird, particularly when you compare it to the 80s, in particular with Ford. They really had very set spec models. So you had like a Popular Plus, L, GL, maybe a GLS or a GLX, and then a Gear and a Gear X, etc. So they're very set specs, and you know, in the 80s, if you had a Ford, you really felt, especially if you had that top of the range gear, you felt like you was a real cost saver if you had that basic model. And anyone around it, you could tell what spec model it was from a mile away. They really showed the different trims. But anyway, I'm digressing, aren't I? I'm supposed to be talking about the Volkswagen. Yes, the Volkswagen Golf. Now, the brochures for Volkswagen in the 70s were extremely colourful, and you can certainly imagine these on a dealer shelf looking amazing. This, of course, is the one we're going to look at today, the 1977 Golf. So let's open this brochure up and see what else we can learn. Okay, here we are, straight onto the first page. And it says straight away, the Golf, 1 million owners, can't be wrong. I think they sold about 6.99 million in total. But remember, this is the 70s brochure. I think, yeah, it's a huge change. I particularly like this colour though. This is barley green. 70s colours were fantastic. Volkswagen was no exception for making these fantastic coloured cars in the 70s. I hope one day these colours do make a return again. And there is a colour brochure at the end of this, so I will show you that as well. And it talks about 1 million motorists can't be wrong, etc. And the assets of this small car that's really a big car. I think this part is the weirdest though. It says here, it might surprise you to know, for instance, that in the back seat of a Golf there's more shoulder room than a Daimler Sovereign. And it says Autocar Source. That sounds a weird statistic to me. I don't know how true that is, but it does seem weird that it's comparing it to a Daimler Sovereign. It then goes on to say the Golf takes 5 full-size travellers in comforts. Again, I doubt that very much. You're extremely cramped with 5 in a car of that size. Even in a newer Golf, and they grew extremely larger to these, it was still cramped with 5 of you in there. So, but they really did push them statistics, didn't they? And there's talking about there's two engine choices at this time, a 1.1 and a 1.6. The pictures here are showing the Golf L, and remember the L is the mid-range trim at this time. The next page is also showing that Golf L in that barley green, really showing the asset of having that hatchback. Hugely practical idea, and like I say, it went on to being what everybody wanted. Although you can see on these early Golfs that it was a very high sill to lift things up into. They didn't actually do that cutout to the bumper till much later. I also remember the advertising for these Golfs as well. It was the new popular sport, golf. Simple as that. Very strange advertising, but I guess it was quite catchy, as a lot of people remember that. This particular model is showing headrests on these, or head restraints. This was weirdly a optional extra. Strange to have a safety feature as an optional extra, but I guess it wasn't as big a deal in the 70s. This is now an interior shot, and lots of black plastic, very 70s indeed. It's talking about the two engine choices now. The 1.1 given a 0 to 50 mile per hour acceleration in 10 seconds and a top speed of 87 miles per hour while returning 33.9 miles per gallon. That's 50 brake horsepower. Or the quicker 1.6 with a 75 brake horsepower, 0 to 50 in 7.8 seconds, top speed over 100 miles per hour, and overall return of 32 miles per gallon. They certainly sound faster when you talk about 0 to 50 rather than the usual 0 to 60. It goes on to say that 1.1 is available on the standard or the L. The 1.6 is for the Golf GLS. And in fact, this page, these pictures are from the top of the range GLS. It looks nice. We've even got that Wolfsburg crest on the steering wheel, or a Wolfsburg castle, where of course they actually built the Golf. We then look at the seats. Again, the interior is that GLS. We're not looking at the different levels at the moment, we're just looking at the Golf as a whole, so kind of like cheating a bit, showing the top of the range GLS with these lovely seats. And it's doing another comparison on this page as well. It says the reason is comfort. Comfort in terms of space. Space for 5 with more rear legroom than you'll find even in cars like the Leyland Princess or Chrysler Alpine. Again, a strange comparison. Cars not in its class. I don't have the vehicles to attest that out, but it does seem very surprising indeed that it's got more legroom than a Princess, which was a very large car at the time. Now we're past the introduction, we're actually looking at the spec levels proper now, and this is your base model, your poverty spec Golf, not even called an L, just called the Golf. A beautiful colour though, this Ryad yellow, another colour from the 70s I wish they would bring back. But there we have it, and you can see from the interior, particularly these very basic seats, no rear wash wipe, we've just got a single speedo, no rev counter on there. So this is, like I say, the base 1.1 model that you could get in the UK in 1977. Surprisingly though, if you look compare it to the other models, doesn't shout out as being the base model when you compare it to the outside of the other models. It's really just in the inside that it's really Spartan. Okay, and we've now gone up a trim level to the L and what it calls the luxury trim. L meaning luxury in this case. And remember, this is the mid-range model. Although we always think of L being a base model, this is talking about it being a mid-model. And it doesn't really shout at you that we've gone up a trim level. Ford would have been throwing all sorts of things on it to make it look one better than the model below it. Here, very subtle changes. It's in the same colour, which is nice to compare the two models. And the difference really is little bits of chrome embellishment. We've got chrome around the windscreen. We've got a little bit of chrome running around the front grille. It's hard to tell, but that kind of like waistline, which was just like a stripe on the lower model, looks like an actual bit of chrome. And the handles are chrome now instead of black. But it doesn't really shout at you as being much different from the outside, at least, to the more basic model. Yes, when you look inside, it is nice. It's much nicer seats, nicer door cards, etc. And it's talking about such luxuries as side swiveling drivers, sun visors, vanity mirror in the passenger sun visor, grab handles and loops, ashtrays and armrests front and rear. And hey, we've got carpeting virtually everywhere, alongside a 2-speed windscreen wipers and an intermittent wipe function. Not really things we think about today as been anything but very basic items put on there, but nevertheless we've gone up a model. And as with all Golfs at this time, you can get them as a 3-door or as a 5-door. Initially it was just sold as a 3-door, but by this time we can have it as a 5-door as well. We're now into top spec territory, the luxurious GLS, the Golf with everything. Again, from the outside, extremely subtle. Ford, we've been shouting from the rooftops that this was the top of range model. Here it's very subtle. I think the main noticeable difference is we've now got these kind of like small chrome centre caps on there. But like I said, tiny little differences. It's also got apparently bronze tinted glazing, and it's hard to tell in this picture, so it doesn't really shout at you, but a bit of a bronze tint to the glazing on this one. The main differences again are in the interior, things like rev counters, these really nice seats that they've got in here, but like I said, just very minor little things at this time. I think another of the main things, of course, we had that rear wash wipe, which was something very standard on hatchbacks later on. This was like an early hatchback for sure. These next 2 pages we're just going to brush over pretty quick. This car is in Mars red. In all the Volkswagen brochures, the next 2 pages were the same with whichever model was on there. Various pictures of the car in strange pictures, I guess, and strange sort of looks from people. And this one's talking about quality. Similar story on the next page. This sort of shot was the same in all the Volkswagens. Just replace the Golf for a Scirocco or even an LT van in various guises with 70s looking people standing by the side of them. This one's entitled All the Motoring World Loves the Golf. And then we have the technical specifications before we get to the colours and trim. So all the little specs on there, if you do want to have a read through that, of course, just pause the video and you can look through all the little bits of extras you have over the L compared to the base model, compared to the GLS. And indeed, it's even got, you know, your factory fitted optional equipment. You could have things like a sliding steel sunroof and 2 halogen fog lamps if you really wanted. Now I do particularly like the 70s Volkswagen brochure for this reason. They always had this colour and interior upholstery choices on the back page. Often they were included in other brochures, and often they were a separate sheet that got lost, but Volkswagen very nicely included them all on the back page, which is nice. Looking at the upholstery, if you just got that base model, the poverty spec one, you could just get your interior in black and white, no matter what colour you spec your car to be. If you got the L, or indeed the GLS, it's saying the all cloth interiors by the way, but it's saying the L is called wide chord, the GLS is a velour interior. Particularly stand out does that sort of marine and blue interior. That looks a very nice 70s colour. And of course that you could only get that particular interior if you chose the right colours cars. So if you did want marine blue, you had to get this silver diamond metallic, or I think there is another option as well. Yes, you could get it if you got the Miami blue. Wow, what a blue car that would have been. Blue interior with the blue outside of Miami blue. I'm not sure, that might be a bit too much blue for me. And we can look at the different colour choices as well. So we can have it in black, this Ryad yellow, Mars red. Mars red, I always think about the early GTIs that seem to be always in that Mars red. We've got Miami blue, that barley green, the Polar white, bronze metallic, Bahama blue metallic, and a silver diamond metallic. And you can see in that bottom right hand corner, you can see what interiors choices you had with whichever colour combination you chose. And it's also saying, as always, metallic paints are an extra charge. So there we go, the Mark 1 Golf. The Mark 1 carried on until 1983. September 83 I think is when the Mark II came out, although the UK, I don't think it actually came out in the UK till March 84. The Mark II was a more aerodynamic, larger car. They tried to make the Golf bigger and bigger until the kind of like, strangely, the Polo became more of what the Golf was, which seems really strange. Certainly by dimensions anyway. They certainly made it a more bloated car as it went on, still keeping those key sort of design elements, particularly thinking about that C-pillar, that big C-pillar. They tried to keep that to really resemble it as being a Golf, even though it grew. Thank you once again for watching a course like today. Please do like and subscribe and comment of your experiences of the particular car. I always like reading those very much. But for now, we'll say goodbye and take care. Goodbye.